When I was a kid, my parents paid for cable, which meant that I was like everyone else during our childhood, eager to watch something fun and exciting. Most of the time, cable television didn't offer any benefits that were worth talking about, besides, I guess, the fact that it existed at all. Before streaming services, we had on demand. Anyone else remember this? Certain channels on the TV could give you access to a limited amount of movies that are available to watch anytime right through your television screen. The only downside to this was your movie selection is very small, ranging from maybe 4 to 5 movies within a genre. One day, I'd been perusing the Movies on Demand channel when I discovered a little horror movie titled Tremors. Instantly, I'm sure a lot of you might have recognized the name, but in case you didn't, I'll summarize. Tremors is, now, a franchise with over 6 or 7 canonical sequels in the universe. None of them are good by any means, but the first movie has always stood out to me and shown a massive display of effort from the filmmakers as compared to the rest of it. But I'm mainly here to discuss the first movie for now, and why I feel like it did an impressive job of not only telling a decent story, but also scaring me during my childhood. The idea that a worm the size of a fucking truck could be burrowing itself underground at like 30 miles per hour gave my inner child too many nightmares to count, and it plays cleverly on the overall idea. Just how safe can things be when the very earth surrounding you is a graveyard? Graboids, as they were coined, are the gigantic worms of the story. They're carnivorous creatures that travel all across the place throughout the story, often being hinted at before the huge reveal later on. The story is a bit long, and in order to give you the scope of things, I'm gonna have to take it back to the beginning. The first movie begins with two best friends named Val McKee and Earl Bassett, repairmen who are stuck in the dead-end town of Mehfection, Nevada. Simply enough, once they feel they've outgrown this washed-up place, a huge turn of events happens when people begin disappearing from town, and a large seismic vibration can be felt from inside the Earth's surface. There are constant foreshadowing moments throughout the introduction that hint at the idea of people causing a lot of ruckus on the very dirt beneath their feet. For someone who may not have seen the movies before, this is a clever way of showing what's about to happen. Despite just barely breaking even at the box office, the first Tremors movie will always remain a classic in my heart. It shows a good buddy relationship between Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, demonstrating a realistic dynamic between a small group of people in the middle of a dead-end town. I compared it very much to Jaws for its amazing cinematic elements and underrated storytelling. Granted, I know this movie was more of a comedy than an actual horror, but it mixed the two perfectly. In one scene, you can have Kevin Bacon roasting Fred Ward, then cut to a couple of construction workers who get murdered by the mysterious threat, only to cut back to them being themselves unaware of what happened. Suspense is an understatement with the first movie. The prosthetic effects on the creatures themselves are so impressive. It still amazes me that the filmmakers could make something so fake look so real and intimidating. When you first see the graboids in this film, it's genuinely scary. You have no clue what the origin could be behind a creature of this impressive size and scale, but it sure would freak you the fuck out if it existed in reality. And wouldn't you believe that they used zero CGI for this entire film? I mean, I think so. I watched it and I didn't see anything like that. Without spoiling too much, the first movie is without a doubt the greatest, as it still stands to be a testament of how to make an original idea come to life and scare the hell out of people. I don't know, I used to have nightmares about graboids breaking through my fucking floor and eating me, so I'd say it did its job right. Tremors was a creepy, fun horror movie and even has Reba McEntire dual-wielding revolvers like she's the fucking Punisher. Yeah, I can die happy knowing I got to see that at some point. Unfortunately, folks, the rest of this video goes downhill from here. We're gonna explore every single Tremors movie after the first film and decide why exactly this franchise seems to have gone the cheaper route rather than blowing up in mainstream media as opposed to other horror media. Join me as I dive deeper into the shit barrel that is the Tremors series. Well, Tremors 2 Aftershocks is certainly a strange case. You'd think after having such a powerful first film that it was fair to expect the sequel to be tons of fun and even scarier than before. That's not the case, sadly. We're off to a horrid start right off rip because Fred Ward is the only reprising role from the first film. Kevin Bacon doesn't come back for a sequel, and the movie blatantly tells you this multiple times in the introduction. Speaking of the intro, the movie begins with some worker hopping across barrels trying to escape one of the graboids. It doesn't work, and he's shown being eaten alive. The first movie took their time when introducing the monster, making the effect all the more intense when it appears. Here, it's just thrown right in our faces. There goes the scare factor, I guess. Now I know what to expect. In fact, for half of this film's runtime, the movie drags on and on. We learn that Fred Ward's character, Earl Bassett, is living in a slog after the success of exploiting the graboids to the press. After winning lots of money, he eventually spent it all on stupid stuff and went broke. There's a businessman who shows up to inform him that the graboids have returned once again to perfection and that he's the only one who can stop them. Like I said, the movie wastes no time. It just throws the audience into what they're expecting. More explosions and graboid killing to a higher degree. There are so many callbacks to the original movie as well, with a new character replacing Val McKee. This character's name is Grady, and he's annoying as fuck. He contributes nothing to the story other than serving as the guy you wish would get eaten at some point, but sadly he never does. Grady himself is always pointing out to others that he isn't Kevin Bacon's character. He says it like 3 different times. It makes no sense. We know you aren't the original character. Shouldn't you be building your own instead of talking about that one? Anyways, the story is dull for the first half. Then things get interesting when suddenly the graboids start to mutate into something different, changing the game overall for our survivors. It plays out like the original with many good moments of the characters discussing this new mutation and how it works. By the end of it all, they end up trapping all of the remaining graboids in a warehouse before blowing it up. Earl ends up getting with the woman of his dreams by some pure ungodly chance, and the team walks away. Everyone's happy. Overall, the sequel to Tremors wasn't nearly as exciting or gritting as I thought it would be. It's plagued with a very, very slow start, lots of unnecessary filler, and pointless dialogue at times. It doesn't even work as a scary movie because we already saw the main threat in the very beginning. What's the point in even trying to hide it? And yeah, I know that they mutated the graboids eventually, but you're gonna see why this doesn't matter eventually. Get ready for some ridiculous ass-blasting extravaganzas. Tremors 3 Back to Perfection is probably the most laughable of the entire series, if I'm being honest. It's usually considered a massive common thing for a popular movie to turn into a bastard trilogy, only to run it into the dirt over and over again. I'm sure this won't be the last time we hear of this to a famous franchise. Anyways, Tremors 3 no longer follows Fred Ward and his stupid friend Grady, but now follows Bert, who apparently has made it big with the discovery of the graboids. The beginning doesn't make much sense. Bert shows up to talk to some media people when a horde of the fucking things begins to attack. I don't understand, didn't they all die in the second movie when Bert trapped them in the explosive warehouse? Where did all these assholes come from? It gets even more confusing when you realize how lazy the writing is. They don't do a very good job of explaining why the original characters are gone. They graze right over it like a fucking graboid slithering through the sand. By the way, this is also the first movie to refer to the creatures as Tremors. Some idiot fucking tourist calls it a tremor, which, again, doesn't make any sense given the context of the universe. People have only ever said graboids. It's not like anyone ever said, whoa, look out for those tremor worms, or... You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. I'm getting sidetracked. This whole movie serves as a vehicle to continue bringing Michael Gross back to the role of Burt Gummer, who honestly does his best, but I said this a while ago. Every movie that continues the story inadvertently shits on the original. In the first Tremors movie, Burt was a contained and respected military man with lots of knowledge and skepticism towards the American government. In the sequel, he was a sad, depressed loner after Reba left him. And in the third movie, I don't know, they kind of just switched his entire arc and made him go full PTSD psychopath. He's way too over the top with his military lingo and constant references to the previous films. Just like the sequel, there's a new threat introduced to the graboid family. A large alligator-looking thing that the characters decide to name assblasters. What, did James fucking Rolfe write this script or something? And I'm not kidding, they fly through the air with horrible CGI that looks more dated than my grandma's fruitcake from Christmas of last year. The effects are very poor here, though there are some snippets of prosthetic effects here and there. Makes you wish they didn't cut away from it so often because the practical shit looks great. There's not much to say about this one. It's a weaker film after the second movie, and that one felt like such a drag for the first hour and a half. Can't say I'm really looking forward to the fourth one, but then again I think there's like 6 of these fucking things. Tremors 4, The Legend Begins, is not only the dumbest title name, but also probably the dumbest in the series. I'm not kidding, I'd rather watch the third one twice in a row than deal with this one for more than 5 fucking minutes. The plot is scrambled like fucking eggs. It stars Michael Gross, once again, as Burt Gummer's ancestor, Hiram Gummer, a rich man who is looking to open up the mines that were shut down due to a strange series of deaths involving the workers inside. So, wait a minute, now we're doing a prequel? Is that really necessary? And it just so happens that Burt fucking Gummer of all people has an ancestor that looks, talks, and acts exactly like him? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is stupid. And since this isn't the Burt Gummer, they decided to just turn his image into a whiny bitch. I feel I have to keep mentioning that every new entry of the Tremors franchise serves as only a means to pick on Michael Gross's character. The first movie, he was fantastic and realistic, but every single one beyond that has just shat on his legacy. And now, we're in the wild fucking west. Turns out, Hiram here discovers that graboids are the culprits responsible for killing the miners. He then plans to assemble a crew of misfits to kill the creatures and finish them off for good so the mine can open and prosper. Immediately once encountering the beasts, Hiram finds out they can't see with eyes, but instead with vibration. In the first movie, it took the main characters an hour or so to figure this out, which was greatly paced and worked well with the story. But nope, once again, here they waste no time. This is what you wanted to see, so here it is. But Jesus Christ, I'm 51 minutes in and we've only gotten 2 scenes with graboids. Technically 1 because the introduction didn't even show them. They just keep focusing on these assholes talking and wasting time, just mocking the Western genre as a whole. They also repeat the same pattern as the second and third movie, giving Burt a doofus partner who has absolutely no idea how anything works and still ends up surviving somehow. Grady, Jack, and even the idiot from the Wild West all share that one character trait, but they don't explore it further or improve upon the formula. It just comes off as repetitive. Finally, we get some action again when the graboids interrupt their sleep. Oh, great. They showed the creature for 5 seconds. Now the main characters are arguing again. What the fuck? Why is this necessary? Literally every time we get an awesome encounter with a graboid, it goes by quicker than you can blink. Then it just goes right back to more character arguments. It's so frustratingly awful to sit through. The Wild West theme tries to fit in here, but if anything, it feels out of place. You could have given this exact same plot to modern day characters, and I feel like it still wouldn't have worked. The effects feel lazy, the writing is bad, and the characters aren't that memorable. I might as well leave it at that. Don't bother watching this. It had no purpose being a prequel, and it barely has a purpose existing on its own. Ugh, we're almost done. The further down the line I get, I can't help but lose track of the first movie. I totally forgot what the hell I was watching after seeing all of these painful sequels. Trust me, it only gets worse. Tremors 5 Bloodlines begins with Burt Gummer once again leading the star role. I'm not complaining since Michael Gross is clearly giving it his all, but they didn't give him much to work with. It's just fucking Burt again, same character and tropes as before. So then we cut to these 2 idiots in South Africa. One of them falls down a hole and finds cave drawings. The scene plays out like there's going to be this epic scary reveal of what they're up against, but nope. It's a pathetic build-up to a jump scare, and that's about it. Turns out, Jamie Kennedy is in this movie. He plays a badass named Travis Welker who drives around on a motorcycle for 2 minutes. Is this supposed to make me like him? And what do you know, he's a bumbling fucking idiot again. Not only are Burt's sidekicks constantly portrayed as morons, but they also happen to be big fans of his. Why are they such huge fans of Burt in particular? He didn't even name the fucking graboids. Jamie Kennedy is at least slightly more entertaining than the others were, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. To add to the tropes of these movies, there always seems to be a mysterious car that shows up to Burt's exact location and gives him the plot right then and there. It's annoying how many times someone just shows up and introduces themselves as if they've existed all along throughout the series. The strange businessman tells Burt that he must once again kill some graboids and capture it on film to unlock infinite money cheat codes and fame. But I don't buy this for a second. In the third movie, the graboids were established among the community and even became a tourist attraction. Didn't he get a massive payout before? Why stoop this low? Because bad writing, that's why. There's a helicopter pilot who drinks while flying the fucking thing, and nobody even cares. I guess this works in the sake of a dark comedy, but I thought this was a horror movie. There is a bit of context thrown into how the graboids move so easily underground, which was never elaborated on before. I thought that was a nice touch, but it's the equivalent of putting ice cream on a pile of vomit. It doesn't really do much for the rest of the movie. These scenes, just like Tremors 2 and 3, play on for way too long. I'm 26 minutes into the fucking thing, and we have yet to see the graboids. I know before I complained when they showed the monster in the opening act, but this is just lazy. There's not even any build-up. Finally, the graboids come back, but they aren't shown at all. It's just another quick cut montage of a naked man and woman screaming. That's it. The suspense left this franchise a long time ago. Eventually, we do see the graboids' new mutation, and it's pretty cool for the sake of CGI. It looks menacing enough, but it still feels like a massive blow to the balls of the original. Overall, it has the exact same setups, the same villain arcs, and the same characters every time with little to no variation. I'm convinced this one exists merely as a means of a paycheck for the actors. Next up is one that I'm personally not excited for. Tremors, A Cold Day in Hell. Yeah, it's a cold fucking day after reviewing these bombs, because I feel like nothing but ash and rubble. The series declines so much as you watch them, and believe it or not, this one is the worst. So it stars Burt Gummer again, you shouldn't really be surprised at this point, alongside Jamie Kennedy, who seems to be the only recurring side character in the series besides Fred Ward and Michael Gross himself. It's the same formula, the same setup, everything plays out like you're watching the same movie with a different skin on it. Almost like the graboids themselves, the movie's mutated into an ugly mess. You're not missing anything by missing this movie. In the intro, 3 scientists die in the middle of a snowy desert. That's the only scene with snow in it. The rest of the movie is full of green terrains and desert environments, so it definitely doesn't feel at all like A Cold Day in Hell. The plot is stupid too. Apparently Burt got poisoned by the graboid that swallowed him in Tremors 3, and now has to find a cure by capturing a live graboid and extracting a sample from it while it's alive. Keep in mind they've done this fucking formula with graboids and capturing one alive in every single fucking movie. While this concept is both wacky and random, I will get behind the idea that Burt is dying and may need a replacement to hunt graboids for him. I mean, they've strayed so far off the beaten path they might as well just make up their own fucking storyline and lore now. Nothing exciting happens. The movie is full of CGI and the deaths are forgettable. The storyline is a copy-paste job of the previous ones with the same bad guy villain arcs, the graboids being super smart and having an unnecessary amount of exposition to their lore, amongst a garbage heap of other issues. One more fucking movie. Let's get it over with. I happened to have the strange opportunity to see the newest Tremors movie that debuted on Netflix, improperly titled Tremors: Shrieker Island. This is the last one of the series as of 2022. So it's pretty stupid. I'd even argue that this one is worse than Tremors 4, but I'm not quite sure. It's as if someone watched the third Tremors movie, fell in love with it, had coitus with it, and then released this miserable pile of regret into the public eye. The plot goes like this. A team of researchers and mercenaries, I guess, have paid money to buy out these giant islands for the sake of studying the graboid species. The leader of the mercenaries, a guy named Bill, is very much made aware to be the bad guy of this film. He always has a menacing Disney grin on his face, and at some points in the story, he just goes fucking crazy for no reason. Bill is obsessed with hunting graboids and shriekers, the offspring of their worm mothers. He willingly allows the graboids to breed with one another for the sake of hunting them down one by one and killing them. It's so bizarre that someone would want to constantly endanger themselves and their hired group in this situation, all for the sake of sport. What's even crazier is the fact that the graboids have now become 100% CGI, whereas even in Tremors 4, they still had some small scenes that included what looked like an animatronic puppet, so the practical effects were never considered here, I'm afraid. Probably a budgeting reason, but come on, you paid for the Tremors license, yet you couldn't make like a huge paper mache? Anywho, eventually, one of the main protagonists of this movie asks this dumb buffoon named Jimmy to find a man named Burt Gummer to help them deal with the graboids once and for all. Jimmy is no different than Grady or Jack or the other moron. I already forgot his name. They're all the same character every movie, so there's nothing to go over besides the fact that he looks like Napoleon Dynamite and never shuts his mouth. It remains open every time he's on screen. He also never changes his shirt, not once in the whole movie. I know this isn't a major problem, you can take that as you will, but it feels lazy and doesn't really mean anything other than being the way you identify that character. So there are a lot of CGI fights involved in the movie, which made me yawn so much I almost passed out in my chair. There's a hilarious moment when the Shriekers use their special scream power to deafen the mercenaries, and the editing is very reminiscent of late 90s horror movies. It's fast forwarded for no fucking reason and makes me feel like I just snorted crack, and all of the characters are just screaming their lungs out, which adds to the ridiculousness. Of course, Bert saves the day and is once again tasked with wiping out the graboids for good. For a movie titled Shrieker Island, though, they don't show you a lot of Shriekers. I'm not kidding, we saw them in the beginning, sure, but only for a few moments. And when they do show you the Shriekers, they shamelessly cut away from the violence. Come on, do the filmmakers think that little kids are gonna be watching this? Where's all the brutal gore? I feel like I'm just watching Predator, but for kids. In fact, the movie pretends it is Predator often. It sometimes shows the Shriekers' point of view with an infrared camera showing us the heat signatures left by the survivors. Jimmy, being the dumb box of fucking rocks that he is, blatantly says, "They act just like predators." And I'm not sure whether to laugh or feel upset. At the end of it all, Bert kills the final graboid, sacrificing himself in the long run. Holy shit. After watching all 7 or however many of these movies there are, I have to tell you guys, it was not a good time. I will admit, with the second and third movie, I kind of enjoyed them. They serve as nice throwbacks for anyone who's curious to check out older movies in the horror genre that might be deemed as underrated. In fact, I would even say the first Tremors movie is by far one of the most underrated horror movies I've ever seen in my life. That's not something that I usually say so lightly because I feel like it's really hard to make horror work. But as every series goes along, they eventually shift away from the horror elements and just make it action, over the top, and make jokes about the previous installments. But that doesn't make for a good movie, that just makes for lazy writing, and no one wants to see that. Anyway, that is every single Tremors movie off the list. Hopefully they don't ever release a new one. Since this is really my first ever movie review or movie series review, hopefully you guys will take it easy on me in the comments if I missed anything important. This is just something I really wanted to try out and give a shot. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.